Have you ever eaten a piece of chicken breast so dry that you had to gulp down a glass of water just for it to slide down your throat? Well, today we are doing part 2 of our chicken breast recipes that you will actually enjoy eating. They are quick and perfect if you're looking for something to cook right now. Chicken breast seems to be a go-to protein for people who are trying to watch their weights. If you're looking for something that's high in protein but not necessarily very high in fat, then chicken breast is the best solution and choice for you. Unfortunately, it also can be quite bland and can get quite tough if you don't cook it properly. Aside from just cooking it or steaming it or grilling it, there are so many different ways you can use chicken breast. It's definitely not my favorite cut. I would always prefer a beautiful thigh or a leg over a breast, but I'm still going to show you these recipes because they're absolutely delicious. We're going to start off with a chicken LARB. So this is a quote-unquote salad that's very popular in places like Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. The first thing we need is to chop up or grind our chicken breast. So basically you can do this by hand, by finally just chopping up a piece of chicken breast skin on, or you can use one of those manual meat grinders like we did here. It just gives you something that's a bit finer, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is build some crispiness, some ragged edges when we fry this off. The first thing we're going to do though is a little dressing for the salad. Some lime juice, or what we call them in the Philippines, these are basically just green lemons. Here I'm going to mix in some sugar and some fish sauce. Next, we're going to do our veg prep. But before doing all that, we're going to cook down our chicken. 3 bird's eye chilies. I like my food nice and spicy. Baked to my eyes already. Garlic, don't really need to mince it. You can just go nice thin pieces of garlic with a little bit of spring onions. I'm going to use the white parts for now. Later, I'm going to be adding some chunky green bits. Start off with some oil, get it nice and hot. Chicken breasts. Idea here is we want to separate it as much as possible in the pan and get those edges nice and crisp before we start adding everything else. So usually when you're stir frying something, you'd usually add some salt. The salt helps to push out some water and dries it up, so it does get a little kind of crispier. But here I'm going to use some fish sauce to that same effect. So a little bit of fish sauce to already season the chicken. Just wait for that to get nice and brown and crispy. Once we have some nice browning, we can go ahead and add our aromatics to the pan. We're literally going to leave this in here for like 2 to 3 minutes. We're just looking to soften down the garlic and soften out the onions a little bit. I forgot one little thing that I like to add, a little bit of tamarind paste to the dressing. It'll just give it like a whole other level of sweetness and tanginess that I think will be really good. So while this is actually warm, you're gonna dress it. So you're gonna just pour this in. This is usually kind of like a warmish salad. It's never cold. Let's give it a taste and then plate it up. Yeah, that's really good. Last little touches, spring onions and some coriander. One thing I love about this dish is just all the colors, and you take something really boring and just make it really interesting by using lots of different flavors to it, which is great. So I'm going to take a little bit of my iceberg lettuce here, take my chicken LARB. You can do this with lamb, by the way. You can do this with beef. You can even do it with fish and salmon. That is so good. My throat's gonna be on fire in like 5 seconds. Let's get to the next recipe. This recipe is called chicken under brick because usually you would have big building bricks that you would basically fold into foil, and then that foil would help press down the chicken, making sure that it cooks evenly, gets nice and crispy, but also stays nice and tender. If, like me, you don't have a brick, that's not a problem. Very first thing you want to do is get the right piece of chicken for this. So here we have a whole slew of different types of chicken breasts in various forms and various kind of stages of process. We're going to be using some boneless chicken breasts with some skin intact. The enemy of crispiness is moisture. So as much as possible, you want to try to basically dry off the skin to get a nice crispy skin. As I mentioned, I don't have a brick, but I do have a really heavy mortar and pestle, and I have kind of like a squarish pan. So So the idea is chicken breast goes skin side down. Put the foil on top. Press the mortar pestle on top so it weighs down the chicken. Next thing you want to do is build a really nice simple sauce to finish off that chicken later. Very simple. So chop up any greens that you have. I'm using some curly leaf parsley here and some coriander. Really nice and fine. What we're going to do to add some brininess to it and some saltiness, I'm going to be using some anchovies. Start with half a fillet, chop that in. Next, some salt, some chili flakes. All of this gets placed into a bowl. To this, we're going to add some garlic, spring onions, a bit more olive oil, cherry vinegar, red wine vinegar, a bit of mustard. Mix that all together. That's basically ready to go. Let's check on our chicken. So like I said, don't worry if it sticks. Flip that over. This is where we go ahead and add in our herb mix. Add in a bit of oil. Right before serving it, we're going to finish off with some butter. Let's give this a try. That combination of anchovies, parsley, olive oil is so classic, and it's one I wish we'd use more in cooking because it's so tasty. It brings such a cool flavor profile to it, and with just a little drizzle of honey, it goes a huge way. So good. This was like a salad, perfect meal. The key to this dish, two things. You want to take pieces of chicken breast that are like this, skin off, basically halved so they're nice and thin. We're looking for something about 1/2 inch in thickness. If you have a big bulgy part and a thin part here, don't freak out too much. Flour, and then not a lot of people do this, but I like to season my flour, so a bit of salt there, so it already seasons the chicken a little bit. So the idea of the flour here is it still allows the chicken to brown in the pan, but it will just make any sauce that comes after it so much thicker and just really, really tasty because you're going to grab all that flavor from the pan, and it's already going to be kind of like a quote-unquote roux because you have some oil and some flour playing around with some crispy bits of chicken at the bottom. So once that's dredged, that's basically kind of like the secret of the recipe. Now all we need to do is cook it. Get a pan hot, a little bit of oil. Chicken is brown on both sides. You see that your pan has some really nicely toasted flour. We're gonna add about 1 more tablespoon of oil in here. We're gonna very quickly add in some crushed garlic. We don't want to burn the garlic. We just want to toast it a little bit. Beautiful brown and crispy. We can go ahead and add some white wine. Green capers, some butter, and then a little bit of water. Getting nice and thick, chicken goes back in. Because it's so thin, it's going to be still really moist and tender. It's comparable to 2 dishes, kind of like a chicken schnitzel, just lighter, not as crummy and not as battery. And the second one, because of the butter and the lemon, really reminds me of a sole meunière, French sole dish that's dredged in a bit of flour, fried, and then added with butter, capers. With chicken, it works just as well. So good. If you want a quick little chicken curry recipe that is absolutely delicious, still sort of healthy, and very easy to make and quick to make, this is the recipe for you. The first thing we're going to start cooking down is the ginger. Ginger's browning, garlic goes in. We're just going to let that brown for 2 to 3 minutes. This is basically what you want to happen. Things get nice and brown and crispy, but not overcooked. This might sound really strange for a lot of people, but this is where I'm actually going to add some red chili pepper, and then my garam masala. Just for 1 minute, and I think what's gonna freak people out is at this point is when you're gonna add your honey. About 2 tablespoons. Cook that honey down, wait for it to get nice and clumpy and sticky. Once we're there, we can add in our whole peeled tomatoes. Wait for the natural oils of the tomatoes to start coming up. So that's gonna take about 5 to 10 minutes. So you've seen the oil is starting, it's looking shinier. That basically means the oil is starting to separate, come out, which is perfect. Now we're gonna do the same thing, but with the coconut cream. So in goes your coconut cream. Up to you how much you wanna add, really. Mix that in, wait till that starts bubbling, wait till that coconut cream starts releasing. Add in some bay leaves, season with salt at this point. You'll have an opportunity to season it more later. My chicken only goes in once I'm happy with the thickness and consistency of the sauce. Our sauce has reduced greatly and it's thickened. Now we can go ahead and throw in our strips of chicken breast. That's gonna cook for a further 10 to 15 minutes until cooked through. Look at this. It looks almost like we added some cornstarch in there because it's just so thick and luscious and unctuous. A little bit of Greek yogurt. Let's taste it. Out of all 4 recipes, if there's one recipe that you guys are trying tonight, this is the one. Feel the love. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.